Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera. And we are back, everybody. We are back. And we are going to be talking about the NBA as we are kind of hitting the time. We're getting like pretty close to the trade deadline. We're getting close to the All-Star break. We just saw the All-Star starters be announced. It's going to be a different format this year. We'll definitely have an episode out for that, talking about some of our best bets. I love betting three-point contests, one of my favorite things to do. So there's always going to be something actionable around the All-Star game. But I do want to start by talking about the Jimmy Butler injury and what that means, I think, for the Golden State Warriors. So a couple different things here. Number one, Jimmy Butler in his mid-30s, ACL injury. It's tough. He's got this year on his contract at about like $54 million, got next year $56 million, then he's a free agent. It's going to be tough to see, when, if at all, maybe he plays again. A couple things that are notable about it, though, right now from a basketball business perspective. The Warriors are past the time that they could apply for a disabled player exception. That was about a week ago. But even if they were eligible, they're over the second apron, so they're stuck in that regard too. So they weren't really going to be able to do too much. Secondly, you can move Jimmy Butler's contract, sure. And I heard some rumblings about that from like a salary perspective, but it's going to be hard to move him to a team that not only has got a player that's on a similar contract, but also is willing to just basically eat like $100 million of contract for like nothing, basically. So, we'll see what the Warriors do. We'll see if they make any moves. Ownership seems to say that, they would basically do anything if it was Giannis, but so would basically every team in the NBA. So that's not really saying a lot. From a this season perspective, I will say that, one of the best bets that I had preseason going into the year was for the Warriors to miss the playoffs. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was like, they're just kind of old. Like they're dealing with a variety of different players that have dealt with a variety of different injuries that have kept them out of games for weeks, months at a time. And, it wasn't so much as betting on injury because I don't like the idea of that from like a metaphorical perspective, but it's just that when you're dealing with older teams, the margins are thinner. Everything kind of has to work out right. And it's a lot harder when you have guys that are often injured. So feel good about that bet right now, but I don't think they'll fall out of the play-in tournament. But it seems like it's pretty likely that they will be in the play-in tournament unless they are able to make some sort of moves and make some run. So that's notable. And it also kind of opens things up in the division. The Lakers are still right there, but Phoenix has looked really, really, really good. The Clippers have come along tremendously since their brutal start to the season. And, you're in a situation where if you're the Warriors, it becomes tough because you obviously are trying to maximize and optimize the team around Steph Curry and whatever's left of Draymond Green, but that's what you're trying to do. And it's pretty scary looking at this team right now. They've been talking about moving Kuminga forever, but what's the market for him? Otherwise, he'd probably be gone by now. So maybe you do need to actually play Kuminga as much as they have tried and tried and tried not to. You might just have to in order to get a player that can help you progress throughout the rest of the season. So curious to see that. I do think that, today DeAnthony Melton put up a bunch of assists, didn't really score too much. I think Melton's going to be pretty solid for them moving forward. I would also kind of look at, obviously Moses Moody's going to get a couple more opportunities. I would say that Podziemski, sure, but Podziemski, he's kind of like struggled to scale. So that's going to be interesting. And then, Kuminga, he played 20 minutes against the Raptors, 20 points. 5 rebounds, 2 assists, pretty solid game. We'll have to see how much they actually get him in these games. But this game, they were getting their doors bleed off the entire game. They were losing 70-50 at half to the Raptors. Something to keep an eye out for and something to kind of stay up to date with. And I'm curious to see how the Warriors progress. But hopefully we are able to see Jimmy Butler play basketball again. These injuries hold guys out like a year. He's a little bit older. Not a lot of guys come back from this injury, especially at his age. I think he'll be 37 by the time he comes back. And hopefully he's able to play. Maybe he gets another contract afterwards, can go on a contender or something like that. But will be something to watch out for moving forward. So let's start diving into the slate, though. I want to talk about these games, and I'll try to be as brief as we can in as we do our like expeditious fashion here. So let's take a look here. So we are looking at the first game that we got on the slate is the Cavaliers versus the Charlotte Hornets. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you're going to be able to see I've got Props Madness up here. Props Madness is probably one of my favorite tools that we've been working with right now. We've just got a million different tools, different aspects to it that I really like. And I'm going to throw a code down here for you guys if you're interested in testing it out. I think that it's really a comprehensive tool. And, it's one where if I'm looking for something or I want to look up something kind of quickly, I can do that. And, you have it at your fingertips, you have it at your desktop. You can obviously save, the web page on your phone. It works really well. That way I don't I'm almost making like an app for it on my phone. Really intuitive app. It's got the hit rate charts that a lot of people like. And, you can toggle the alt lines to however you want. It's got all the props and it's got some of these really cool things with like shooting zones, similar players, play type analysis, and even shot type analysis. And then obviously you can add all the filters that you want with a minutes, head to head, opponent rankings, etc. So, and who's in or out for your own team. So, highly recommend it. Think you guys should all check it out and give it a shot. I think that it's really helped my prop betting, and I think it will definitely help yours as well. So, for this game, we got the Cavaliers versus the Hornets, and I'm going to be on Con Kneppel over 20.5 points plus assists. It was just recording buckets with Kyle Murray and Kyle Murray and Brandon Kravitz for Action Network. Kyle was on this play. Really like it. I think it's a sharp play on Con Kneppel over 20.5 points plus assists. He missed this line last time out against the Denver Nuggets when, shockingly to the world, the Hornets blew their doors off. And the Hornets won by 23 points. It really wasn't a competitive game the entire time. And Con only played 27 minutes. It's not like super far off of what he generally plays, but we are usually seeing like somewhere in like the low to mid 30s for Khan. So it is about like a full rotation for him that he missed. And he still had 17 PA there. Part of why we like the points plus assists as opposed to just the points. Points, obviously, very, very consistent. Good shooting zone here against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who tend to allow shots from beyond the arc. And that's where Khan kind of makes his living. But from an assist perspective, we've actually seen him, this is a good assist matchup in terms of assists allowed. It's a little bit more of a favorable matchup here. But we are seeing from a potential assist perspective over the last, let's say, 10 games here, we're seeing him averaging 5.8 potentials, a little bit lower in a couple games here, like against the Warriors, only had 3 potentials and only had 4 potentials against the Pacers. But some of those are like tough assisting matchups here. If we looked at some of the assists allowed here, if you went to a couple of the more favorable matchups, he's doing a little bit better in that regard. So I think what we're looking at, though, is from where he tends to assist from is he is tending to assist like a little bit everywhere, a little bit kind of at the rim. The Golden State, or rather the Cleveland Cavaliers, just are continuing to allow a ton of looks from beyond the arc. So I think that given what the overall shot profile is for the Charlotte Hornets, Khan is going to be able to dish just enough to make this worth going for the combo stat as opposed to just the straight points. So I like over 20.5 points plus assists, widely available at this number at this point in time. The other thing that I was looking at was Jalen Tyson. It's been insane without Darius Garland and without Sam Merrill this year. We're looking at some injuries for the two of them. He's got 15 plus in every single game that he's played this season without the two. He's 8 for 8 on this line, averaging 22 points per game. My concern is just like a little bit that the Hornets play at a little bit of a slower pace. So I do have some concerns there. And honestly, like the margins on this, even though he's hitting the 15.5, the margins are still a little bit thin here. We're looking at a couple games at 18, another game at 16, obviously the one game at 15. And then, these games that he just went absolutely crazy in. The one game he had 39 points, unlikely to do that again. So it's kind of lifting this average up pretty significantly. So I think the 15.5 points is a fair line. Definitely something that I'm considering, though. I actually think I might try to go even a little bit further down and look at like Craig Porter. I think that his ability to kind of get out there, especially from a rebounding perspective, might be decent here. Hornets are solid from a rebounding perspective because in large part because of the pace and then also because the defense is pretty poor. So you're not getting as many offensive rebounding opportunities. But I think that Craig Porter at 3.5 rebounds isn't a bad look. Without Garland, without Merrill, he's averaging 5 rebounds per game this season. So he's coming off a 5 rebound game against the Oklahoma City Thunder in 21 minutes. And, he's put up some bigger rebounding games as well. So it's a good rebounding guard. I think it's something that you can kind of consider, maybe water it down, play it as a little SGP action here with a couple of these looks from this game. Looking at the Nets versus the New York Knicks, I'm going to be grabbing Karl-Anthony Towns over 20.5 points. It looks like it's moved. I gave it out in the Discord, gave it out in the huddle. One of the things that I really can't recommend it enough. Right now, we are absolutely crushing over our last, over our last 30 days. We are like I'm plus 23 units right now. Just at like what we're tracking at a widely available point. It's not an overload of plays, 73, 57, and 4, 20% ROI right now. I these lines just move pretty fast, and I try to get them out as soon as I possibly can to you guys. I want to get them to you when I'm betting them, not just uh, when it's convenient to me. So if I can't get it down on it, then or if you can't get down on the number that I'm trying to give out, then I'm not going to post it. I'll send you whatever's widely available. But for me, I really like the spot for Karl-Anthony Towns. The New York Knicks are losers of 9 of their last 11, so never forget this losing streak. But the Jalen Brunson, captain of the team, called a players-only meeting to kind of address some of the issues that they've had lately. And I think that some of it has to do with toughness, tenacity, focus, right? And Josh Hart kind of made some comments afterwards saying, they're going to lock in. They need to really bring a concerted effort to win this game against the Brooklyn Nets. And there's been a lot of conversation about, did the Knicks now lose the Cat trade where, you move Randall and DiVincenzo to get Cat? What do you do with Cat? Do you try to move off of him? Do you trade him? What have you, right? And I think that the answer is probably a little bit more nuanced than that. I think that right now, part of it has to do with the fact that Cat's not really making some of these looks. He's been really rough at the rim. He has not been a good finisher this season. And as a result, we've kind of seen his points slide. We've also seen one of the things that I think is different because people in a couple of my group chats, we were talking about Mike Brown. Like, is Mike Brown the problem? I don't totally think so. I think that one of the major differences between Mike Brown and Tibbs is that Mike Brown obviously plays the bench. But the other thing that's different is Mike Brown is he's made like comments saying, I have a different lineup that I want to try today, or there's a different rotation that I want to see, or there's a different combination of players that I want to see out there. As opposed to what Tibbs kind of did, and what Tibbs was doing was just, I know the rotation that I want to run. I know the guys that are the best, and I'm just going to run them into the dirt. And while that really works well for regular season purposes, and then that unit might get a lot of synergy together, it doesn't work the same way when you get into the postseason. And if you have to be adaptable, if you have to run, or if somebody gets hurt, or if you have to run and have some counters to what your opponent's doing, you just don't have it. So I think this is a long way of me saying that I think what Mike Brown's doing has kind of given some players, and in large part, I think this is a Cat comment, but it's given some players uncertainty in like what their role is, or they don't necessarily understand what the role is. And that's because like he's trying to do some different things. He understands that the goal of this team is not just to make the playoffs. It's not to win a lot of regular season games. The goal of this team is to win a title. And when you're doing that, you need to try to be versatile. You need to try to understand and do a little bit of adapting with your personnel. So for me, looking at this spot with Karl-Anthony Towns, Carl's been like pretty good when he gets the opportunity. And a lot of it sometimes has to do with him being aggressive or like playing within the flow of the offense. And looking at this spot, I think this is a great bounce back opportunity for him. And it's weird to even call it a bounce back. He's had 22 and 23 points in his last 2 games, but he had kind of struggled for a little bit of time between then, right? But for me, this matchup against the Brooklyn Nets has been great for him. 37 points and 28 points this season. And looking back over the past few seasons, he's had at least 25 points in all of those games. Just been a tremendous scorer in this type of spot. 27 points, 28, 26, 25, 28, 37. And that's even been with a lot of the players healthy on this team. And we've seen other players, like other bigs, have success against this Brooklyn Nets team. Şengün, 20 points. Embiid, 27 points. AD, 24 points. Wemby, 31 points. And it kind of matches up. Brooklyn has not necessarily been great defending the rim. They're pretty solid at limiting three-point opportunities, but from a spot up perspective and from a pick and roll man perspective, Cat's been really, really solid. And I think that those are two of the areas that Brooklyn kind of struggles with. So for me, I think this is a great opportunity to buy on Cat right now. It's not really a buy low. It's a little bit more of a look, everybody's looking at him, everybody's calling him and trying to make him almost like the scapegoat of what the Knicks' problems are. But at the end of the day, the numbers don't really lie. And I think the Cat's actually been okay. It's just that his role is kind of morphing. And, with after that players only meeting, I think they're going to be pretty locked in here. And I like Karl to succeed in this spot against the Brooklyn Nets. All right, so let's look at the next game here. We got the Pacers versus the Celtics. A couple different looks here. Jaylen Brown's been really solid against the Pacers over the course of his career. A lot of these games are with Tatum here, but this season, 31 points, 30 points. He's been a 30-point machine. The rebounds also kind of fluctuating a little bit. I think the 6.5 is a little high, but definitely has been a pretty good rebounding matchup for him as well. But the guy that I was going to target, I was looking at Peyton Pritchard. I thought, Pritchard, he's had success against Indiana, 11, 29, and 23 this season against them. So that was definitely something I was considering, but I wanted to go with Luka Garza over 11.5 PR. I was able to grab. Looks like it's bumped up now to 12.5. So I'll talk about it from there. From the 12.5 perspective, the biggest thing for me is that Garza has kind of carved out a pretty nice role for himself for the past 15 games or so. And if we look at that, for the last 15 games, he's averaging 20.7 minutes per game, and he's averaging 14.9 PR, 9.5 points, 5.4 rebounds. He has played Indiana 3 times, actually, 15, 19, and 12 PR. In the game that he had 12 PR, he's only 3 for 4 from the field, but 6 rebounds on 13 chances. Other games, 15 points, 4 boards on 11 chances, 6 points, 9 boards on 17 chances. So I think there's a pretty good opportunity here for him to go over this 11.5 or 12.5 PR. The 11.5 was on 365, so it might still be there. But you sit this in 13 of 15 or the 12.5 and 11 of 15. 2 of those misses are at 12. So really good history over the recent time. But the big thing for me is that I was reading this piece about Garza, and it was about how he had been looked at somebody that wasn't really going to be able to stick in the league. They weren't ever sure if it was really going to make it. And then now, he's one of the players on the Boston Celtics that's playing extremely fast. They were talking, actually, the critique was about how he's slow. And now he's actually hit some of the top speeds for the Boston Celtics at any point while being on the court this season. He's been excellent as a 3-point shooter, surprisingly enough. And we are seeing him be really successful in this role now. So the key is that because he can shoot the threes, not only can he, kind of pick and pop, but he also can effectively be a pick and roll man. So he can roll toward the hoop. He can also, obviously roll and take a 3-pointer. Really good opportunity for him. And I think it helps him be a little bit more flexible. I think that that's really a good spot for him against this Indiana team, who is obviously pretty weak on the interior. They do tend to allow some threes, but they're weak within the paint. They're weak in the, in the everything from within the arc. And I think this is a good opportunity for Garza. So at 12.5 PR, I think it's a great bet here. And I'm definitely interested in this. Looking at the Hawks versus the Grizzlies, I want to bring up the spread and the look at this game. So the Grizzlies are 2.5-point home favorites. Memphis is just got back home from overseas. They were in Germany, they were in England. Now they're going back home. Tough schedule spot, if you ask me, against an Atlanta team that kind of just had a really rough loss to Milwaukee. CJ McCollum has kind of torpedoed some of the usage in Atlanta. That's a little bit concerning. I think that they need to get the ball back in Jalen Johnson's hands, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's hands, and just let Jalen Johnson run the show here. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on in this matchup. I do think that I would lean towards Atlanta. I was looking at Jalen Johnson rebounds, but I don't have anything formal in this game. Looking at the Pistons versus the Pelicans, I zeroed in on Jalen Duren. I grabbed double-double, and I sent that out in the huddle. We got minus 130. We're already seeing this now minus 170, minus 180, minus 185. I think if you can't get that, the 28.5 PR is decent, but I'd rather go to 16.5 points, which is currently available at DraftKings. I think that that is the way to go against this Pelicans defense that's really, really weak on the interior with Zion Williamson and Derek Queen. Eve Mesey's solid, but he's still like little bit more of a slighter frame than Jalen Duren. So definitely something that I'm looking at there. Then we've got the Bucks and the Thunder. Thunder are going to be pretty big favorites here. Thunder are 9.5 point favorites heading into this game. And honestly, like Giannis, as good as he is, he's, it's always a tough spot against Oklahoma City because you just never know what the score is going to be when you're playing them. They've had some success previously, but, and Giannis in theory should be a good matchup here. But with you got Kevin Porter Jr. questionable, Miles Turner is questionable. This game has a lot of potential to just get completely out of control. So while I think that the rebounds here for Giannis could be particularly strong, I just don't know how much he's going to really play if this game gets if it gets out of hand, which wouldn't shock me in the least bit. Even looking at Shea, his points props at 31.5. No J-Dub, so that's notable, obviously, especially for this season. But I do think that there are some concerns about the spread of this game and some of the injuries that are on there. So going to keep an eye out on those before I really make any formal recommendations. I would say that normally I would like to go to Ryan Rollins without Kevin Porter Jr., but I have significant concerns in this game. I think it's already kind of being priced in a little bit, and the matchup against Oklahoma City is brutal. So not something that I want to try to get ahead of from an injury perspective, as good as I think Ryan Rollins has been and can be in this spot. Finally, looking at the Raptors versus the Kings, back to back for both of these teams, the Raptors were able to kind of roll a bit. They just dominated this game against the Warriors. And the Kings actually, did they win this game? No, they lost this game to the Miami Heat a little bit earlier as well. So it's a game where the Raptors aren't necessarily traveling far. So despite the back-to-back and the road back-to-back, I would say that's a little bit less of a concern. I will say that I do think that Domantas Sabonis probably sits this one out. So that's something to consider. Russell Westbrook's actually been like kind of on fire. So we'll keep a look at him. But I will say that, when you look at this is nice. So one of the tools with Props Madness is you can cycle people out, whether they're in, whether they're out. You can just see what their numbers are kind of looking like. The rebounds for Russ a little bit higher, and the assists as well without Sabonis. So something I would maybe consider. And Raynaud has been really effective as well. So I'd probably look at him from maybe like a points perspective or maybe a PR perspective against a little bit of a softer interior for the Toronto Raptors, obviously without Jakob Poeltl. So just a couple things. I think these lines that we're showing on the screen are going to be a little bit stale. They're going to be from the last game, but just something that I could show you to, illustrate a little bit of the point and some of the averages that I was looking at without Sabonis in the lineup for the Kings. So that's going to do it for our slate, for the Wednesday slate. And for Pods and Recs, I am going to recommend, number one, that you like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. I really appreciate it. The YouTube is great if you can get there. Definitely it's nice to have some of the videos to kind of correspond with this. You can see what I'm looking at, and you also get an idea of some of the data and some of the tools that I'm able to use to help break down a slate. And it helps me out too. YouTube is just another distribution method, which is really nice, and it's a good way for me to kind of try to expand the brand. Secondly, I am going to recommend, I've been on this kick. So hot sauce is great, obviously, and I used to always make the sauce when I was in like college. I always feel like I gravitate towards it, but it's like hot sauce and honey mustard. Love it. And like, I think it's technically like a gold sauce, like a hot gold sauce of some sort, but like, my God, I love it. So I'm going to recommend like hot sauce and honey mustard in some sort of combination. Fantastic. You can dip your fries in it. You could coat wings. You can put it on a chicken sandwich. You put it on anything. It's great. So highly going to recommend that. And just keep rocking. It's always good to have a nice little sauce at your disposal. Sometimes it can really elevate a meal or something that you weren't necessarily thinking about wanting for dinner. Can help make it a little bit easier to palate if you're able to switch it up, especially if you're meal prepping. I know people are doing that right now. It's like the beginning of the year. You're still on your fitness grinds from your New Year's resolutions. Add a little sauce in there. Spice up your life. Spice up your food and call it a day. Just do your best, keep rocking with us, join the huddle, get these picks early, and we can continue to cash that.